The Valkyrie had watched Earth for 30 years before they decided to invade. They were tall creatures with 4 arms and pale blue skin. Their empire covered 17 star systems. They had never lost a war. Admiral Torek stood in the war room of his flagship. Around him sat the 12 members of the High Council. They had all come to hear his report on the small blue planet called Earth. "The humans are weak," Torek said. He waved his upper arms, and a hologram appeared in the center of the room. It showed human soldiers marching, tanks rolling across fields, and jets flying through clouds. They used primitive weapons, chemically propelled projectiles, explosive devices. Nothing that can threaten our shields. High Commander Brel leaned forward. His eyes were dark and cold. "What about their nuclear weapons?" "We have seen the recordings of their tests. Dangerous to themselves mostly," Torek replied. "They have only used them twice in actual war. Their leaders are afraid of them. They will not use them against us. And even if they do, our ships can withstand the blasts." The council members clicked their mandibles in approval. This was good news. "Tell us about their soldiers," Brel said. Torek changed the hologram. Now it showed individual humans in combat. They ran, they hid, they fired their small weapons. Some fell. Others kept fighting. "They are fragile," Torek explained. "They need water constantly. They need sleep every day. Their bodies break easily. A single plasma bolt will kill them instantly. They have no natural armor, no claws, no venom. They are perhaps the weakest intelligent species we have encountered. And yet they dominate their planet," another council member observed. "Through numbers and tools," Torek said. "Nothing more. They make up for their weakness with technology. But their technology is centuries behind ours." He changed the hologram again. This time, it showed a single human lying on the ground with a long rifle. The human was looking through a scope at something far away. "They have specialized soldiers called snipers," Torek continued. "They use magnified optics to shoot targets from long distances. Our tactical AI, I studied them carefully. Their maximum effective range is about 2,000 meters. "And our shields?" Brel asked. "Our personal shields activate when they detect incoming projectiles at 3,000 meters. The human snipers cannot touch us. Our AI has classified them as a negligible threat." The council voted. The invasion was approved. The fleet would leave in 10 days. Far across the galaxy, on the planet the Valkyrie planned to conquer, a young woman named Yuna sat in a dark room and cleaned her rifle. She was 28 years old. She had black hair cut short and steady hands that never shook. For 6 years, she had been the best sniper in the Korean military. Her call sign was Ghost. She had earned it during an operation where she killed 11 enemy targets in one night. No one ever saw her. No one ever heard her shots. The enemies simply fell, one by one, and by morning the mission was complete. Now Colonel Dohan sat across from her. He was an older man with gray hair and a face that showed no emotion. On the table between them was a metal case. "The aliens are coming," Dohan said. "You have seen the news. The governments have been preparing." Yuna nodded. Everyone had seen the news. Strange ships had been spotted at the edge of the solar system. Messages had been sent, but there was no response. The world was afraid. "They will land in 3 days," the colonel continued. "Our intelligence says their first target is the Gangwon province, right here in Korea. What do we know about them?" Yuna asked. "They are called the Valkyrie. They have conquered many worlds. They are bigger than us, stronger than us, and their technology is far more advanced." Dohan paused. "But they have made a mistake." He pushed the metal case toward her. Yuna opened it. Inside was the most beautiful rifle she had ever seen. It was longer than her current weapon, matte black, with a scope that looked like it belonged on a spacecraft. The design was sleek and deadly. "This is new," the colonel said. "Top secret. Experimental. It fires smart rounds that can adjust their path in flight. Effective range is 4,000 meters." Yuna looked up. 4,000? Yes. The aliens believe our snipers can only hit targets at 2,000 meters. They have set their personal shields to activate at 3,000 meters. They think they are safe. Yuna understood immediately. If she could shoot from 4,000 meters, her bullets would hit the aliens before their shields could activate. They would never see it coming. "They studied our weapons," Dohun said. "They studied our tanks and our planes and our bombs. But they dismissed our snipers. They think we are irrelevant. Just soldiers with fancy scopes. They never considered that we might improve. They overlooked us," Yuna said quietly. "Yes, and that mistake will cost them everything." Yuna lifted the rifle from the case. It was heavy but balanced. She looked through the scope. The world became sharp and clear, every detail visible. "How many of us are there?" she asked. "Snipers like you?" "In Korea, about 30 with this level of training. Around the world, maybe 300. Every country with a military has them, and every country has received these new rifles." Yuna set the rifle down. For the first time in a long while, she smiled. The Valkyrie had studied humanity for 30 years. They had counted every tank, every plane, every ship. They had measured every weapon and calculated every threat. They had decided that Earth was weak, but they had forgotten one simple truth. Humans were not just builders of weapons. They were hunters. For thousands of years, they had survived by waiting in silence and striking from the shadows. The Valkyrie thought they understood humans. They understood nothing. 3 days later, the alien ships entered the atmosphere. The invasion of Earth had begun, and in the mountains of Korea, Yuna watched them descend through her scope. Her finger rested gently on the trigger. The aliens were about to learn what it meant to be prey. The alien ships fell from the sky like metal seeds. They were silver and shaped like teardrops, and they made no sound as they descended. The people of Earth watched from their windows, their phones, their television screens. Fear spread across the world like a cold wind dot in the mountains of Gangwon province. Yuna lay flat on her stomach. She had been in position since before dawn. The ground was cold and hard beneath her, but she did not move. She had learned long ago that stillness was the sniper's greatest weapon. Beside her, Corporal Taiwu watched through a separate scope. He was her spotter, her second pair of eyes. He was 31 years old, with a calm voice and quick mind. His job was to find targets and calculate distances. Her job was to kill them. "First ship landing now," Taiwu whispered. 3,800 meters southeast. Yuna adjusted her scope. She could see the ship clearly. Its metal surface gleamed in the morning light. A door opened in its side, and figures began to emerge. The Valkyrie were exactly as the briefings had described. Tall, nearly 3 meters high. Pale blue skin that looked almost white in the sunlight. 4 arms, too large and too small. They moved with confidence, like creatures who had never known fear. "They are setting up a perimeter," Taiwu reported. "Soldiers spreading out. I count 40 so far. More coming." Yuna watched them work. They moved quickly and efficiently. Some carried large weapons that glowed with strange light. Others set up machines that hummed with power. Within minutes, they had established a small base. "Officer spotted," Taiwu said suddenly. "Near the center. The one without a helmet." Yuna shifted her aim. She found him immediately. He was taller than the others, and his armor was decorated with symbols that probably meant rank. He stood with all 4 arms crossed, watching his soldiers work. His head was bare, his face exposed. He looked bored. Like this invasion was just another routine job. Distance is 3,847 meters, Taiwu said. Wind from the northeast, 7 kilometers per hour. Temperature is 4 degrees. Yuna made the adjustments. The smart round system in her rifle calculated the rest. A small light in her scope turned green. The shot was ready. She breathed in slowly, then out. Her heart rate dropped. The world became very quiet. She squeezed the trigger. The rifle whispered. The suppressor swallowed most of the sound. The bullet left the barrel faster than the speed of sound. It flew through the cold morning air, and as it flew, tiny motors inside it made small adjustments. Wind pushed it left, and it pushed itself right. Gravity pulled it down, and it lifted itself up. 3 seconds passed. The Valkyrie officer collapsed. There was no warning. No flash, no explosion. One moment he was standing, and the next he was on the ground with a hole in his neck. Blue blood pooled beneath him. The soldiers around him froze. They looked at their fallen commander. They looked at each other. They did not understand what had happened. "Confirmed kill," Taiwu said. His voice was steady, but Yuna could hear the satisfaction in it. They have no idea where the shot came from. Yuna was already moving. She shifted her position slightly, found a new angle. Another target appeared in her scope. A soldier who was running toward the fallen officer. She fired again. The soldier fell. Panic began to spread through the alien camp. Soldiers shouted in their strange language. Some raised their weapons and fired at the mountains, but they were shooting blind. Their plasma bolts hit rocks and trees and empty air. They were nowhere close to Yuna's position. She fired a third time. A fourth. Each shot was perfect. Each target dropped without ever knowing what killed them. "They are retreating into the ship," Taiwu reported. "Smart. They cannot fight what they cannot see." Yuna lowered her rifle. Her work here was done. 6 confirmed kills in less than 5 minutes. The aliens had come to conquer Earth, and in their very first hour, they had learned that this planet had teeth. Across the world, similar scenes played out in the forests of Finland. A sniper named Hana watched a Valkyrie communications officer through her scope. He was setting up some kind of antenna outside his ship. She was 3,600 meters away. She waited until he was perfectly still, then fired. He fell, and his antenna fell with him. In the deserts of Jordan, a man named Jiwan lay hidden beneath a camouflage blanket. The sun was brutal, but he did not move. He watched 2 alien scouts walking through a valley below. They were exploring, mapping the terrain. They never looked up. He killed them both before they could report back. In the mountains of Peru, an operator with no name and no country took out an entire patrol. 5 aliens, 5 bullets, 5 kills. The whole thing took less than an hour. No alarms were raised. No calls for help were sent. The patrols simply vanished. The Valkyrie had expected resistance. Their intelligence reports had warned them about missiles and tanks and fighter jets. They had prepared for bombs and artillery and nuclear threats. They had brought shields and armor and weapons of great power. They had not prepared for silence. They had not prepared for invisible death that came from beyond their understanding. They had not prepared for humans who could kill from distances that should have been impossible. On the first day of the invasion, the Valkyrie lost 47 officers and specialists. Not one of them was killed in a battle they could see. Not one of them had time to fight back. That night, Admiral Tarek read the casualty reports in his flagship. His pale blue skin had turned almost white. His forehand shook as he held the datapad. "How?" he demanded. "How is this possible?" His tactical AI had no answer. The data did not make sense. The humans were shooting from beyond their supposed maximum range. The casualties had wounds that should not exist. Something was wrong with their intelligence. Something was very, very wrong. On Earth, Una made camp in a hidden cave. She ate a small meal, checked her equipment, and prepared for the next day. The aliens would adapt, she knew. They would learn. They would find ways to fight back. But for now, the night belonged to the hunters. And the Volturi were learning what it meant to be hunted. By the fourth day, the Volturi had lost 63 officers. Not in battles. Not in explosions. They simply died. One moment alive, the next moment dead. Holes in their bodies, blue blood on the ground, and no enemy in sight. Admiral Torek stood before his tactical AI and demanded answers. The machine was the most advanced computer in the Volturi fleet. It had helped them conquer 17 star systems. It had never failed them before. Analysis is incomplete, the AI said. Its voice was flat and mechanical. The casualties show damage from high-velocity projectiles. The wounds suggest the projectiles came from beyond our shield activation range. However, our data indicates human weapons cannot achieve such distances. Torek slammed his fist against the console. Then your data is wrong. Update it. Updating, the AI replied. New parameters required. Please provide additional information. But Torek had no additional information. He only had dead soldiers and a growing sense of fear. He ordered his engineers to modify the personal shields. Instead of activating at 3,000 meters, they would now activate at 5,000 meters. This would give the soldiers more protection. But there was a problem. The shields needed power. Extending their range meant using more energy. The armor suits could not handle the extra load. Something had to be sacrificed. In the end, the soldiers moved slower. Their targeting systems became less accurate. Their communication devices worked only half the time. They were safer from the invisible enemy, but they were weaker in every other way. Tarek hoped it would be enough. It was not. On the fifth day, Una killed a Volturi pilot as he walked from his ship to the command tent. The distance was 4,100 meters. The pilot's shield flickered, but too late. The bullet had already passed through his skull. On the sixth day, she killed 2 engineers who were repairing a damaged generator. They were standing close together. She used 2 bullets. Both fell at the same moment. On the 7th day, she killed nothing. But she watched. She studied the enemy camp. She learned their patterns, their schedules, their weaknesses. A good sniper did not just shoot. A good sniper observed. Corporal Taiwu tracked their progress on a small tablet. Command reports 400 confirmed kills worldwide. All from sniper operations. No snipers lost. Una nodded. The numbers were impressive, but she knew they would not last. The aliens were learning. They stayed inside their ships now. They moved quickly between buildings. They never stood still in open spaces. They are scared, Taiwu said. Fear makes people careful, Una replied. Careful people are harder to kill. She was right. The easy days were ending. The Volturi had stopped sending officers outside. They communicated through sealed channels. They built walls and barriers around their bases. The hunting was getting harder, but the hunters adapted too. Una received new intelligence from Colonel Dawn. The aliens were building a power station in a valley 20 kilometers away. The station would give them energy for their weapons and shields. Without it, their invasion would slow down. The station is heavily guarded, the colonel said through her earpiece. But our satellites spotted a weakness. The cooling system requires external vents. The vents are on the west side of the structure. If you can damage them, the whole station will overheat. Distance from safe firing position? Una asked. 3,900 meters. Maybe more. I can make that shot. She relocated over the next 2 days. Moving was slow work. The aliens had begun to patrol more frequently. They sent scouts into the mountains and valleys. Yuna had to be invisible. She traveled by night. She hid by day. She ate cold food and drank from streams. Her muscles ached. Her eyes burned from staring through her scope for hours. But she did not stop. She did not rest. On the 10th day, she reached her position, a small ridge overlooking the valley. The power station sat below like an ugly metal flower. Valkyrie soldiers moved around it, checking equipment, standing guard. "I see the vents," Taiwu said. He was beside her as always. "West side," just like the colonel said. 3 vents, each about half a meter wide. Yuna studied them through her scope. The vents glowed with faint blue light. Heat rose from them in waves. They were the station's lungs, releasing the hot air that kept the machines from burning. "If I hit the central vent, what happens?" she asked. "According to the engineers, the cooling system will fail. The station will overheat within 30 minutes. They will have to shut it down or risk explosion." Una calculated the shot. It was not her longest, but the target was small. The margin for error was almost nothing. She waited for the perfect moment. The wind died down. The air became still. The blue glow of the vent pulsed like a heartbeat. She fired. The bullet traveled for nearly 4 seconds. It crossed the valley in silence. It passed through the hot air rising from the station. It entered the central vent and struck something deep inside. A shower of sparks erupted. Alarms began to wail. The blue glow flickered and died. The Valkyrie soldiers ran in every direction. They shouted commands. They searched for the source of the attack. But Yuna was already gone, sliding back from the ridge, disappearing into the forest like smoke. Behind her, the power station began to fail. Without cooling, its core temperature rose. The machine screamed. The lights flickered. Within an hour, the entire station went dark. The invasion had just lost its main power source in Korea. That night, Colonel Dohan sent a message to the global sniper network. The message was simple. The enemy adapts. We adapt faster. They build walls. We find ways through. They hide in their ships. We wait for them to come out. They believe they are conquerors. We remind them they are prey. Keep hunting. Yuna read the message in her hidden camp. Around the world, 300 snipers read the same words. They cleaned their rifles. They checked their ammunition. They prepared for another day of silent war. The Valkyrie had come to Earth with ships and soldiers and weapons of great power. They had come expecting to crush a primitive species. Instead, they found themselves trapped in a nightmare they could not understand. An enemy they could not see. A death they could not predict. And in the darkness of the mountains, the hunters smiled. The Valkyrie were not stupid. They had built an empire across the stars. They had conquered species far more advanced than humans. They learned from their mistakes. High Commander Brel arrived on the 11th day. He was older than Admiral Torek, more experienced, more ruthless. He had won wars that lasted centuries. He had destroyed civilizations that dared to resist. He took one look at the casualty reports and made his decision. "The humans have found a weakness," he said. "They exploit our shields. They attack from distances we did not expect. So we will close those distances." He ordered the deployment of hunter-seekers. These were small drones, no bigger than birds. They flew silently through the air, searching for heat signatures. When they found a hidden human, they reported the location. Then the soldiers came. The drones had thermal cameras that could detect a human heartbeat from 500 meters away. They had quiet engines that made almost no sound. They were fast, smart, and deadly. Within 2 days, 3 snipers were killed. The first was a Swedish marksman hiding in the Arctic snow. The drones found his body heat against the frozen ground. Soldiers surrounded his position. He fought back, but there were too many. He killed 4 of them before he fell. The second was a Brazilian woman in the Amazon jungle. She had been operating alone, taking shots at alien patrols. The drones tracked her through the trees. She tried to run, but they followed. She died in a river, her rifle still in her hands. The third was a Chinese specialist in the mountains of Tibet. He had held his position for 9 days without being detected. Then the drones came. They found him within hours. His last transmission was a warning to his comrades. The momentum shifted. The hunters were now being hunted. Yuna received the news in her mountain hideout. She read the names of the fallen snipers. She did not know them personally, but she knew their work. They had been good. They had been careful. And they were still dead. The drones are a serious problem, Taiwu said. His face was grim. We cannot hide from thermal imaging. Our body heat gives us away. Yuna thought about this. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then she picked up her communication device. Colonel, I need access to the Electronic Warfare Division. Dohan responded within minutes. What do you have in mind? The drones share information. They work together. If we can disrupt their communication, we can blind them. There was silence on the other end. Then, I will connect you with someone who might help. An hour later, a new voice came through her earpiece. It belonged to a young man named Juho. He was a specialist in electronic warfare, trained to hack and disrupt enemy systems. I have been studying the drones, Juho said. They operate on a shared frequency. I cannot shut them down completely. They have backup systems, but I can confuse them. How? Yuna asked. I can create false heat signatures. Make them chase ghosts. The drones will scatter, looking for targets that do not exist. During that time, you will be invisible to them. How long will the confusion last? About 90 seconds. Maybe less. After that, they will reset and start looking for real targets again. 90 seconds. Not long. But for a sniper, 90 seconds was forever. Do it, Yuna said. The next morning, she put the plan to the test. She found a position overlooking a Vulturi repair station. A damaged scout ship sat in the open, and alien engineers were working on its hull. It was a perfect target, but the drones were there too. She could see them circling overhead, their tiny bodies glinting in the sunlight. They swept the area constantly, searching for threats. Ready? Junho's voice crackled in her ear. Ready. Activating countermeasures now. The drones suddenly changed direction. All at once, they scattered across the sky, flying toward different points on the mountainside. They chased phantom heat signatures that existed only in their confused sensors. Yuna lined up her shot. An engineer stood beside the damaged ship, holding some kind of tool. He was completely focused on his work. He never looked up. She fired. The engineer fell. The drones did not react. They were still chasing the false signals, too confused to understand what had happened. Yuna fired again, dropping a second engineer. Then a third dot. By the time the drones reset, she was already moving to a new position. She left no trace, no evidence of where she had been. The machine searched the empty mountainside and found nothing. That afternoon, Colonel Doan shared the technique with the global network. Electronic warfare specialists around the world received Junho's program. They learned how to create false signatures, how to blind the drones, how to give their snipers those precious 90 seconds of invisibility. The balance shifted again. High Commander Brell stood on the bridge of his flagship and read the latest reports. 30 more dead. The human countermeasures were spreading. His technological advantage was crumbling. This is not warfare, he said to Admiral Torek. This is something else. Something we have never faced before. What do you want to do? Torek asked. Brel stared at the blue and green planet below. Earth, such a small world. Such a weak species. And yet, they were killing his soldiers faster than he could replace them. We underestimated them, Brel admitted. The words tasted bitter in his mouth. Our intelligence was wrong. Our assumptions were wrong. Everything we believed about humans was wrong. He made a decision. It went against everything he had learned in 1,000 years of war. But he was not a fool. He knew when a battle was lost. Begin preparations for withdrawal, he ordered. We are leaving this planet. Torek's eyes widened. Leaving? Aye, Commander. Our fleet is stronger than anything they have. We could destroy their cities, burn their forests, poison their oceans. We could win by force. And how many soldiers would we lose? Brel asked. How many more would die to enemies they cannot see? We came here to conquer, not to be slaughtered. He turned away from the window. The humans have taught us something valuable. They are not prey. They never were. The withdrawal orders went out that night. Across Earth, Veltari forces began packing their equipment. Ships that had landed began to lift off in the mountains of Korea. Yuna watched them go. She did not smile. She did not celebrate. She simply watched through her scope as the alien ships rose into the sky and disappeared among the stars. The invasion was over. But she knew this was not the end. The galaxy was vast, and it was full of dangers. The Veltari would remember what happened here. Other species would hear the story. And one day, someone else might come. But when they did, Earth would be ready. The snipers would be waiting. The Veltari left on the 14th day. Their ships rose from every continent, climbing through the clouds and into the darkness of space. The people of Earth watched them go. Some cheered. Some cried. Most simply stood in silence, unable to believe what had happened. The invasion was over. Humanity had won, but victory had a cost. Cities had been damaged in the early days of the attack. Thousands of civilians had died from the initial bombardment. Entire neighborhoods had been turned to rubble by alien weapons. The world was hurt, but it was not broken. Admiral Torek sent a final message before his fleet left orbit. It was broadcast on every frequency, translated into every human language. You have shown abilities we did not anticipate. The Galactic Coalition will review our assessment of your species. We will not return without permission. This is our pledge. Colonel Doan received the message in his underground bunker. He read it twice, then set it aside. Pledges from conquered peoples meant something. Pledges from retreating invaders meant nothing. He called Lieutenant Yuna. Come home. It is time for a debrief. 3 days later, Yuna sat in a conference room with the colonel and several high-ranking officers. They wanted to know everything. How had she survived? How had she adapted? What had she learned? She told them about the distances she had shot from. She told them about the power station and the repair crews and the false heat signatures. She told them about the long nights hiding in caves and the cold mornings waiting for targets. She told them everything. When she finished, the room was silent. You killed 19 confirmed targets, one general said, at ranges that should be impossible, without ever being detected. The rifle helped, Yuna replied. And Corporal Taiwu and Junho from electronic warfare. I did not do this alone. No, the colonel agreed. You did not. That is the point. He stood and walked to a screen at the front of the room. With a touch, he displayed a map of the world. Red dots covered every continent. Each dot represented a sniper operation. 437 confirmed kills, Dahon said. 3 snipers lost. That is the final count. In 2 weeks, a few hundred soldiers with rifles did more damage than our missiles and tanks combined. He turned back to the room. The aliens came here expecting a certain kind of war. Big weapons, loud explosions, armies clashing in open fields. They prepared for that war. They would have won that war. He paused. Instead, they got ghosts. Silent deaths from invisible enemies. They could not fight back because they could not find us. They could not predict us because we did not follow their rules. We beat them not by being stronger, but by being different. The generals nodded. They understood. This victory would change everything. In the months that followed, the world rebuilt. The damage was repaired. The dead were mourned. And the lessons of the invasion were studied carefully. The Sniper Corps was officially recognized as a strategic asset of the highest importance. New training programs were created. New weapons were developed. Young men and women from every country applied to join. Only the best were accepted. Yuna was promoted to captain. She was given command of the new Advanced Precision Warfare Division. Her job was to train the next generation of snipers, the ones who would protect Earth from future threats. On the first day of training, she stood before 50 recruits. They were young and eager, fresh from basic training. They looked at her with respect and fear. They had heard stories about the ghost of Gangwon. The aliens studied us, Yuna began. They watched our planet for 30 years. They counted our weapons. They measured our strength. They calculated exactly how dangerous we were. She walked slowly in front of them. Her eyes were cold and steady. And they were wrong. They were wrong because they measured what we had, not what we could become. They saw our limits and assumed we would stay within them. That was their mistake. She stopped. Her voice became quiet, almost gentle. You are not here to become what you already are. You are here to become more. To shoot farther than anyone thinks possible. To hide better than machines can find you. To strike without warning and disappear without trace. She looked at each of them in turn. Some flinched. Some met her gaze. The galaxy knows about us now. They know what happened here. Some will leave us alone. Others will come to test us. When they come, you will be ready. She turned and walked toward the shooting range. The recruits followed in silence. 5 years passed. The Galactic Coalition sent a diplomatic envoy to Earth. They came in peace, they said. They wanted to negotiate. They wanted to understand the strange species that had defeated the mighty Velthari. Humans accepted the envoy. Trade agreements were signed. Information was exchanged. Slowly, carefully, Earth began to take its place among the stars. But the snipers remained. They trained in secret facilities around the world. They developed new technologies, new techniques, new ways to kill from impossible distances. They never forgot the lessons of the invasion. In the Velthari Tactical Archives, a new entry was added. It concerned human snipers. The entry was brief, but its message was clear. Threat level, maximum. Engagement range, unknown. Detection probability, near zero. Recommended response, avoid at all costs. 20 years after the invasion, an old woman tended a small garden in the mountains of Korea. Her hair was gray now, her hands not as steady as they once were. But her eyes were still sharp, still watchful. Yuna had retired from active duty 5 years ago. She had trained hundreds of snipers. She had written manuals and designed training programs. She had done everything she could to prepare Earth for whatever might come next. Now, she grew vegetables and watched the sky. Sometimes, late at night, she would take out her old rifle. She would clean it carefully, the same way she had cleaned it 1,000 times before. She would look through the scope at the distant mountains and remember. She remembered the terror of those first days. She remembered the cold mornings and the long waits. She remembered the faces of the enemies she had killed and the friends she had lost. But mostly, She remembered the moment when she realized they could win. The moment when she understood that the aliens had made a fatal error. They had dismissed her. They had dismissed all the snipers. They had thought they were irrelevant, and they had paid for that. Mistaken silence. Una set down her rifle and looked up at the stars. Somewhere out there, empires rose and fell. Wars were fought and won. Species lived and died. But Earth endured. Its people endured. And when enemies came, the hunters would be waiting. She smiled and went inside. Tomorrow would bring another day. Another chance to teach. Another chance to prepare. The galaxy had learned what humans could do. But they had only seen the beginning. The best was yet to come.